Most Hollywood marriages don't survive fame. Most don't survive addiction. And almost none survive a diagnosis that threatens to unravel everything a couple has built. Yet Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan have somehow made it through all three, and for decades they kept the real story mostly to themselves. Only in recent years, through interviews, memoirs, and a handful of unscripted moments in front of cameras, has Tracy finally opened up about what it actually took to stay together for nearly 40 years. What she's shared isn't a fairy tale. It's something far more interesting, and far more human. To understand why their story matters, you have to start with how different these two people were before they ever met. Tracy Pollan was raised in a well-established New York family on Long Island, surrounded by education, culture, and a sense of stability that most kids in show business never get to experience. She gravitated toward acting early, but she came to it through theater, with a grounded, no-nonsense approach to the craft. Michael Fox grew up in a military household in Canada, moving from base to base, eventually dropping out of high school as a teenager to chase an acting career in Los Angeles with almost nothing to his name. By the time the two of them crossed paths, their lives could not have looked more different. Michael had already become one of the most famous young actors on the planet thanks to Family Ties and the explosive success of Back to the Future. Tracy joined the cast of Family Ties in its 4th season to play his character's love interest, and by her own admission, she wasn't impressed. She said publicly that her first impression of him was that he seemed a little too pleased with himself, which is a fairly blunt reaction to give one of the biggest stars in America. But something changed once they actually started working together. The persona fell away, and what she found underneath was someone funnier, sharper, and more self-aware than she expected. She's talked about being drawn to his intelligence and his sense of humor almost immediately once she got past the surface. Still, nothing happened between them at the time. She was in a relationship with actor Kevin Bacon, and once her season on the show wrapped, their paths simply separated. It would take another project, a couple of years later, to bring them back together. In 1987, they were both cast in the film Bright Lights, Big City, and by then Tracy's previous relationship had ended. This time, things moved quickly. They spent real time together on set, the connection was immediate, and Michael has since described it as one of the first times in his adult life where he felt like he could stop performing and just exist as himself around another person. That's a significant thing to say for someone who had spent years being recognized everywhere he went and living inside a carefully managed public image. He proposed at the end of that year, and the two married in the summer of 1988 in an outdoor ceremony in Vermont that blended both of their religious backgrounds. It wasn't a massive Hollywood spectacle. It was intimate, attended by close friends, and built around who they actually were as people rather than who the tabloids wanted them to be. The early years of the marriage looked, from the outside, like everything was going right. Their son Sam was born in 1989, and Michael's career was still moving at full speed. But in 1991, while filming on location, Michael noticed a small twitch in one of his fingers. He assumed it was minor, maybe nothing at all. It wasn't. The eventual diagnosis was early-onset Parkinson's disease, a progressive neurological condition with no cure, arriving when he was only 29 years old. He came home and told Tracy the same day he found out, and what happened next is one of the most talked-about parts of their story. According to Michael, there was no panic and no dramatic unraveling from her. She simply reminded him of the commitment they had made to each other and made it clear she wasn't going anywhere. He's described the way she handled it using a simple analogy about carrying something difficult together rather than trying to fix it instantly, an image that captures the practical, steady kind of love she offered him in that moment rather than empty reassurance. What makes their story more layered, though, is what happened next, because Michael did not handle the diagnosis well at first. He kept it hidden from the public for 7 years, continuing to act, do press, and win awards while privately managing a condition that was slowly progressing. And during that period of secrecy, he has openly admitted to turning to alcohol as a way of coping with something he didn't know how to face. This wasn't casual social drinking. In interviews, he's described a period of drinking alone, using it to numb the reality of what was happening to his body. Tracy witnessed this firsthand, and at a certain point she made the decision that staying quiet wasn't the same as being supportive. She confronted him directly, asking him point-blank whether the person he was becoming was really who he wanted to be. That kind of question isn't gentle, but it isn't cruel either. It's the kind of thing only someone who genuinely loves you is willing to say out loud, and by his own account, it was the moment that pushed him toward getting real help. He entered recovery, got sober, and started therapy, crediting Tracy directly for pulling him back before things went further. During this same stretch, the couple also welcomed twin daughters in 1995 and their youngest daughter in 2001, meaning Tracy was raising 4 children while also supporting a husband working through both addiction recovery and a hidden illness, largely without the public knowing any of it was happening. Everything changed again in 1998, when Michael underwent brain surgery to help manage his tremors and decided it was finally time to go public with his diagnosis. After keeping the secret for 7 years, the announcement was a shock to fans who had only ever known him as the confident, quick-talking characters he played on screen. Not long after, he stepped away from his television series and launched the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research, redirecting his career and his platform toward funding research instead of chasing more roles. That foundation has since become the largest non-profit funder of Parkinson's research in the world, having raised hundreds of millions of dollars and accelerated scientific progress on a disease that affects millions of people globally. Tracy has never been a passive presence in that mission. She sits on the foundation's board and has spoken publicly at its events about what it's actually like to be a caregiver and family member living alongside Parkinson's, a role that rarely gets the same attention as the person diagnosed. At one of the foundation's galas, she was candid about how difficult that role can be for spouses and children, while also crediting Michael's own attitude for making the day-to-day easier on the people around him. She's pointed out that his relaxed, accepting approach to his own condition has shaped how she and their kids have been able to handle it too. One of the more surprising things Michael has said publicly is something that, taken out of context, sounds almost like a warning sign in the marriage. During a television interview, he made a point of saying that Tracy has a life that exists separate from his Parkinson's, and separate from the characters that made him famous. At first listen, that might sound like distance. But when you actually sit with it, it's the opposite. It's Michael acknowledging one of the real reasons their marriage has lasted this long. Tracy never let herself be fully absorbed into the role of caregiver or the wife of a famous actor with a chronic illness. She kept her own friendships, her own identity, and her own sense of self intact the entire time. She figured out when her presence was needed and when giving space was actually the more supportive move, and she did it without turning it into a public display of sacrifice. That balancing act, showing up completely when it counts while still holding on to your own life in between, is genuinely hard to sustain for a few years, let alone for decades. Their personalities have also played a role in balancing each other out over time. Tracy has said openly that she tends to be the one who worries about the future, while Michael has built his entire outlook around staying present and accepting things as they come. In one interview, she credited his optimism as something that has genuinely shaped how she approaches things now, admitting that she used to be the complete opposite of that mindset before spending decades next to him. That kind of gradual influence, where each person's disposition rubs off on the other over the years, is often what actually holds long relationships together, far more than any single romantic gesture ever could. When Tracy has finally been asked, directly, what the secret to their marriage actually is, her answers have been strikingly simple. At the Foundation's gala, when asked about the key to staying together for so long, she didn't reach for anything dramatic or cinematic. Her answer was essentially that they take things one day at a time, and that approach has simply worked for them. It sounds almost too plain to be meaningful, but that simplicity is exactly the point. They never tried to plan out or solve the next decade in one conversation. They focused on getting through the day in front of them, trusting that enough of those ordinary days stacked together would eventually add up to something extraordinary. In multiple interviews with magazines over the years, she has returned to another consistent theme, which is the importance of actually listening to each other rather than just waiting for a turn to speak. She's described their relationship as one where they are genuinely present for each other when it matters, and Michael has echoed that sentiment back publicly, crediting her as the person who holds their family together. Their son Sam recently got married, and when Tracy was asked what advice she gave him heading into his own marriage, she reportedly gave him the same philosophy she's lived by for almost 4 decades, take it one day at a time. Coming from someone who has actually lived through early-onset Parkinson's, a partner's addiction recovery, constant public scrutiny, and the everyday where that any long relationship accumulates, that advice carries a lot more weight than it would from someone who hasn't been tested the same way. More recently, Michael made a surprise appearance at an awards ceremony where he reflected on his career and thanked the people who made it possible. When he spoke about Tracy, he referred to her as the greatest gift of his life, crediting her with giving him their 4 children and, in his usual style, joking that without his acting career, none of them would exist in the first place. For one of their recent wedding anniversaries, he posted a tribute online calling her the love of his lifetime, and her reply was simple and warm, essentially saying that after all these years, they're still standing in the same place, unchanged. What Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan have built together isn't the kind of love story that gets summarized in a single dramatic headline. It's something slower and, honestly, more impressive than that. It's a marriage that survived the disorientation of sudden fame, a life-altering diagnosis that arrived when he was still in his 20s, years of hidden struggle with alcohol, The pressure of raising 4 children under constant public attention, and the slow physical toll of a disease that has no cure. And it held together, not because of one grand gesture, but because 2 people kept choosing, day after day for almost 40 years, to listen to each other, to give each other room to stay whole as individuals, and to simply show up again tomorrow. Tracy didn't reveal some hidden scandal or a secret that reframes everything we thought we knew about them. What she revealed is something that's actually much harder to hold onto over decades: consistency, quiet commitment, and love that never needed an audience to prove it was real. If this story surprised you, that's kind of the point. The most lasting relationships rarely look like what we expect from the outside. Let us know in the comments which Hollywood couple's story you think deserves more attention, and subscribe if you want more of these deep dives into the real people behind the headlines.